How to mount and zero in a scope. Servus, thanks for dropping in. Today I want to show you a tutorial while keeping it as simple and concise as possible. I already have two older videos where I tried to show how to mount and zero in a scope, and always something was missing. Plus, over the time things changed and features were added that I also want to explain. Today I'm making a complete video that you can use as a blueprint to mount and zero in your scope. This does not mean that this is the only way of doing this. I'm sure there are more options which other people may prefer. This is the way I do it, and this is the way that works in the end and delivers a very good result. It doesn't mean other ways are worse. Okay, so what did I bring today? I brought a rifle, I brought a scope. This is the Element 6224 x 50 FFP Emerald, the Helix. I chose this because it brings some special features. Your scope may not have these. In this case, just skip the parts where I explain one of these specials. Here I've got a bubble level. It's a bubble level for the rifle. You can do this without it, but if you want to do it 100% correct, it makes sense to have one for your rifle. Of course, you can find them in my shop. Just search for bubble. There's a 11mm version for 11mm prism rails and a Weaver version depending on if your rifle has a 11mm prism rail or a Picatinny Weaver rail. I recommend these. If you have several rifles or just do this from time to time, buy it once. It's around €19 and it just helps you reaching a 100% good result. I prepared the tools I need. Here is a height adjustable Sportsmatch UK mount. I'll explain later why I chose the height adjustable ones. Here I've got a second bubble level. This is from a hardware store. The only important thing here is the flat lower surface, and I'll show you why you need exactly that. You can get it in hardware stores, €1 shops, or different web shops. The first important thing is the choice of your scope and the mount. The scope simply has to fit to your rifle. With a PCP rifle without a break barrel, it's pretty simple because you can use any length for the scope. With break barrel rifles you have to check for the maximum length of the scope so it's not in the way while breaking the barrel or loading the Diabolo. If you have questions there, just contact me via the consulting and sales form on AirGhandi.de/en. I'm happy to help you find the right scope and mount. It can be a little bumpy if you're not that deeply informed in this field. Otherwise, of course, you can go to my shop jabolo.de where we will add more and more information to support you. As of now, you already find a fitting mount for a Picatinny Weaver and one for 11mm prism rails at every scope in the shop in the accessories. Either way, you will find the right equipment with us. Just choose the way you prefer. Okay, so we've got the rifle with a Picatinny rail. This is a FX Streamline and the rail is not forward tilted, which is very important information. You often have rifles with half a degree or 1 degree or 20 more or 30 more forward tilt. That's super important. When you buy a rail for your rifle or the rifle itself, always check for this information. I'll explain later why it is so important. With the 11mm prism rail, you'll basically never have a forward tilt. That's where it is especially important that scope and mount harmonize with it. In general, I recommend a forward tilted mount for scopes with a +20 times zoom, and when it is known or unknown that the rifle has a barrel drop, meaning a forward tilted barrel. If you want to get the maximum quality out of the lenses of a scope with a smaller zoom, like 12 times, 16 times, I also recommend an either forward tilted one piece or height adjustable two piece mount to generate the needed forward tilt. Let me just explain why this is important. If it's not a 3000 euro scope you're using, normally the lenses in a scope have the best clarity and quality in the center and get weaker moving closer to the side. If, for example, you have a scope where you have to turn your height turret very far into one direction to the side of the lens, you basically look through this slightly lower quality side. And yeah, of course, that's a bummer if you buy a 300, 400, 500 euro scope and then don't get the maximum out of it because you don't look through the center. If you generate a forward tilt, and I'll show you how to do that, you can set the crosshair right to the center of the lens after zeroing in the scope, and you get the best quality your scope has to offer. I'd say we start mounting the scope now. I have a forward tilted mount because my scope has a 24 times zoom and because I want to get a maximum out of it. First I remove the upper part of the mount. Mostly it's 4 screws. If you do this a lot, you can see it's much easier with the right tools, so you should go and get them. If you just do it once or twice, the scope normally comes with a small hexagon wrench. Yeah, it's like this one here. Well, yeah, it's kind of fiddly and a little slower. Since I do this 3 to 5 times a week, the 10 euros for the wrench were money well spent. Okay, what's important? You can see I can turn this here, often it is a hex screw or a headless screw, to attach it to the rail. Make sure that both are looking in the same direction, not one here and the other there. Otherwise your scope may be twisted, which would be very bad. So now I'm taking the rifle. Have to open this further up. I loosely plant it here and then I just slightly fasten it. Like I said, I have a Picatinny rail. If you have an 11mm prism, it is basically the same. I'm roughly placing the scope. Now I grab the upper mount plate and turn 2 screws slightly in, just so the scope and the mount don't fall down. Again, super easy with the wrench, and yeah, that's it. The first thing we have to find out now is, where do we place the scope? Do I move it further back or to the front? What's the right setup? Well, I copied something that I saw which works best for me. I'm taking the rifle, and don't worry, there's no magazine in it, the safety's on, it's unloaded, just so you know that I can work with it a bit. Then I close my eyes and find a comfortable position. I'd say now, yes, this feels right. Then I open my eyes and check if the distance to the scope is correct. How do you find out if the distance is correct or not? The moment you are too close, you can't see the full target area because you just have a small visible area in the middle. You're too close. This If you are too close, it may also be that you see a black ring around your visible area. This means you have to set it up in a way that you can look through it comfortably without any dark areas on the side, upper, lower, whatever, of your visible area. When I placed the mounts before, they were far from each other and reduced my options to play with the distance of the scope. So yeah, I placed them closer together now. Now they are closer. I tighten the screws softly so it doesn't fall off. And now I do the same thing again, meaning I close my eyes and get into a comfortable position, just listening to my body. Does it feel good? My cheek is fine, my shoulder is good. I open my eyes and I see it is not perfect yet. I have to move it a little more to the front. Of course, you have the possibility to find out what the perfect eye distance for your scope is. It's different from scope to scope, but in the manual you often find an eye distance of 8, 9, 10 centimeters, or there is a Hawk scope called Touch, where you can completely close the distance between eye and scope. Let's check again, and now it's perfect. This means I'm looking through the scope, I'm keeping both eyes open and I don't see a black side area, so I'm not tilting sideways, I'm not too close, and now I defined the distance or eye distance. Before we tighten the screws on top and fix the scope, it is important with Picatinny rails that you push the mounts to the back of these little hollows. When you use your scope on another rifle, or you remove it for transport and reattach it, you have the advantage now that you can push it back into the same spot and you don't have to zero it in again. It's always the same setup and you don't have to readjust. Again, it makes sense to go for the high quality mounts here, so you can guarantee the same setup again and again. With cheaper mounts, I'm pretty confident that you will have to readjust it after you removed it once. Next step, we have to check that it is positioned straight. I loosen the screws on top again, so it can move freely. It is important to build the mounts not too close to the turrets and fasten them too hard. I'll tell you more about fastening it later, because this could A, damage it, or B, it will twist it depending on how thick the material is. We've got 2mm aircraft aluminum here, so chances are low that you squeeze it, but with a cheaper scope it can happen that you damage the lenses, or yeah, something shifts inside, so be careful there. I'm placing all screws now in the respective holes. There are major differences between different mounts. Don't necessarily buy the cheapest stuff, especially when it comes to the screws and yeah, the fixing. I recommend a high quality mounts with a higher precision in the end. Let's just assume you get a €9 mount from eBay. It can happen that it is not manufactured accurately and you get a slight twist in the scope, or you simply can't fix it 100% accurately. So yeah, what I'm trying to say is the mount should fit the quality of your rifle and scope. If you shoot an €80 beginner's rifle with a €50 scope, you don't need a €200 mount, sure. On the other side, using a €20 mount with this rifle and this scope to save a few bucks, well, yeah, let's say that the chain is as strong as the weakest link. Okay, by now everything's still movable. Now we have two different options. what we want to achieve is that the crosshair in the scope is straight. So it doesn't lean sideways while you're holding your rifle. I'm recommending this approach. Like I said, if you do this more often, buy one of these bubble levels. You can find them in my shop with the scope accessories. For a rifle with prism rail, get the 11mm Wasserwaage. You'll find it by searching for bubble, or you get the one for Picatinny. As you can see, I attached the bubble level, and as you can see, the bubble is not centered, meaning my rifle is not standing straight. The cool thing is I have a pretty high quality bipod. I just loosen this lever here, and now I place the rifle perfectly straight. We know now that the base of the scope is straight. Now we reach the point where we want the scope perfectly straight on the rifle. We have two different options. First, you take a string with a weight on its end, so you build a plummet and hang it from your shooting gallery or a wall, so you have this straight string. Now you look through your scope and align your crosshair with that string, and your scope is 100% straight. I go the easier way and use my cheap bubble level. I need a flat surface on my scope. Hawk turrets mostly are flat on top. The element is flat after removing the cap. I place the bubble level, and now I adjust the scope until it's 100% straight. Okay, now it's straight. Now I have to tighten the mount caps. It is important that the slit between the upper and lower part of the mount is the same size on both sides of the mount. We can control that by fastening the screws in the right order. I start by taking the first turns on the screws without touching anything else and without fastening them yet. Yeah, it's just to bring them to the point where they start getting grip. I'm controlling the angle again. Everything looks perfectly straight. I see that I can still move this mount cap freely, so I screw it in some more without using any force. And now it would need some force to go on, so I stop here. And I'm stopping here, I'm stopping here, and I'm stopping here. Both slits are exactly the same size. Now I do the same on the back. They are the same right now. I stop here. And try that the top doesn't move. Yeah, that's looking good so far. Well, we want to be perfect, so another millimeter here. Now it is minimally tightened, just so the top plate is straight. And now I start, for example, front right, place my wrench and take a quarter turn. Then I go diagonally across and take a quarter turn there. Now I go to the back, take a quarter turn, and I cross diagonally and take another quarter turn. Now I start on the other front side, quarter turn here, quarter turn there, and it gets harder already. quarter turn. Oh, here it was a little loose. Quarter turn, and I control from time to time. Fits perfectly, and I do the same again. On a PCP gun, I fasten them hand tight. If your equipment is even better than mine and you have a torque wrench, fasten the upper screws with 1.7 Newton meter and the screws down there on the side with 3.1 Newton meter. Now the scope is fixed. I screw on this cap here again, and I go to my shooting table to zero in the scope. We're at the shooting table now. If you have a scope that you can adapt to your visual impairment on the ocular, it is important to proceed like this. Take a white sheet of paper and put it in your shooting gallery. Look through your scope and manipulate the ocular until your crosshair is 100% sharp. It doesn't matter if the paper or the surroundings are sharp. The moment you set it up perfectly, for me that is now perfectly sharp, you have adapted the scope to your eye. Now we have to make sure that we hit the center of the target with the scope, meaning we have to perfectly zero it in. That is why I talked about adjustable mounts before. Here on the side you can see 2 additional screws on each side. Since the rifle is not forward tilted, I have to generate the tilt myself. I can do that on a 2-piece mount with a height adjustable mount. That means I loosen these 4 screws, and now you can see it, I can tilt the scope. How do we find the exact center of the lens now? We'll do it like this. I'm turning the height tower until the end, until it stops. Now I've reached it. Next, I turn it the other way while counting the number of clicks. Yeah, with my element here, I have 206 clicks. Everybody who owns the element helix gets lucky. You don't have to count and can just turn it to one direction. Of course, on this glass you have the markers for 0, +2 and -2, showing you how many turns you went in any direction. If you want it perfectly done, you can use my approach. So now we have 206 clicks from one end of the lens to the other. We know that now, and to reach the middle we have to take half of 206 is 103, means 103 clicks in the other direction. Now I took 103 clicks in the other direction and we see perfect manufacturing here since I ended up right on the 0. This means now my crosshair is exactly in the middle of the lens. Now I go and I take the first shot on the target. What's going to happen? I won't hit the target. Okay, let's see. Good thing here is that I got my Saber Tactical shaft with the monopod bench rest. With the monopod you can adjust perfectly, otherwise you have to help yourselves with something like sandbags. And as you can see, I am on the target. Didn't expect that. And now I will adjust the height without using turret clicks. I'll open up the screws on the back mount and move up just the back mount until my sideline matches my shot. So next I recenter my aim again. And I see I went a little too high now. Of course you could now accept that and make the probably 10 to 12 kicks in one direction. I'll adapt once more and then I'll be happy. I think this is it. Maybe a bit too low, but it won't make a huge visible difference. Now I take the next shot. My gut feeling says it'll be a little low. Okay, we're very close now. I went a little too low. Now I turn the height turret up a bit and 2 clicks to the left. I'm aiming for the middle again. Yeah, that's looking good. Let's take another one. Of course, with a spring piston rifle, it is not that easy to zero it in. Just a second, I'll say more about that after the shot. Yeah, I'd say that one was dead center. Yes, with a spring piston rifle, it is not that easy to zero it in, since you have the recoil, and maybe you are not that experienced yet, then you have to take some more time. After mounting the scope perfectly on your rifle, you take maybe 10 shots and then find the trend, like the center of these 10 shots. If they're all in the upper right, move it further down to the left. And yeah, here, especially if you are a newcomer, it can take you 30, 40 shots until you set it up perfectly. With a PCP rifle, it is way easier. Yeah. Okay. So what did we do? We mounted the scope, we set the perfect eye distance, and we set the forward tilt, so we are in the center of the lens. The specialty with the tower of the element helix is that we have a zero stop. That's the black ring here. I'm loosening it with the headless screw, so I can remove the zero stop. This means if you always want the maximum flexibility of the turret, you just remove it, put it in a drawer. But if you are, for example, a field target shooter who sets his rifle to the highest point of the bullet trajectory, just imagine this is your sight line, and you have the barrel down here. You shoot and the Diabolo crosses the sight line upwards and then further away the second time downwards. If you want to zero in on the highest peak of the bullet trajectory, you also can set the zero stop there. Now imagine the 10 meters we just shot, or 11 meters, are the highest point. I take the zero stop and place it on the turret again. It has a little notch, and there's another one on the turret where it connects. I tighten the 3 headless screws again, and now I've set the zero stop to the highest point. On the turret I have these inscriptions, so now I also zero in the turret on the highest point. The biggest advantage, if I turn the turret now Imagine the highest point of my bullet trajectory being at 11 meters and I want to shoot 13 meters. I just turn the turret in the positive direction. If I want to get back to 11 meters, I turn it against the zero stop. I turned it to zero. Now I screw the cap back on. Here we go. Now I can say I'm shooting 25 meters. I go 10 clicks and take the shot. And without looking at it, I can turn it back to the zero stop and I'm at the highest point again. After everything is now perfectly mounted and set up, I can attach the flip caps. You can see the ocular standing out because it's adapted to my sight. We put the flip caps on and we finish zeroing in our rifle. To sum it up, we're searching for the eye distance by closing our eyes. We are attaching the scope, we are mounting the scope perfectly, we are setting the ocular up so it is perfectly sharp. We'll focus the target via the parallax later. We find the middle of the lens and then we bring the crosshair there and finally we zero in the turret. I hope everything was understandable, otherwise rewind to where it was complicated and tricky. I know it's not done after watching it one time if you are new to this, but you can come back anytime and rewatch these parts and I'm sure you'll find the solution. In case you're still having trouble, just contact me at airghandi.de/en. Just write me. Up until now I managed to support every single shooter until a rifle was zeroed in. Scope, FX Streamline, Saber Tactical Shaft, Element Optics, Sports Match mounts, bubble level and the monopod. You can get it all at jabolo.de as well as other products. I hope you'll take a look. Thanks a lot for watching. Ciao. See you next time, says AirGhandi.